Hi, everybody. Welcome to Challenging what I'm calling really difficult clients. I'm excited to be part of Iris's first virtual course. We will be adding to this over the next year, always finding interesting topics for our subscribers and those others that want to follow. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Tiffany Stoner. Sometimes I call myself the better half of our photography team called Nathaniel Edmonds Photography. I've been in business with my brother for almost 20 years. We reside in Indianapolis, and between the two of us, we have six kids. I specifically have four, and two dogs and two cats. So life for me is always pretty much nuts. So this module in particular, I've learned a lot about clients over the past 2 decades, and I think I have a lot of great information to share with you. I also, on the other side of things, work for Iris. So I am the marketing director, and oftentimes you'll hear from our team, we're small but mighty. My favorite quote: women belong in all places where decisions are being made. So let's get started. Basically, I think the biggest thing you can do in all of this is just set yourself up for success. If you haven't had a difficult client yet, congratulations. I applaud you. I would say they aren't often, but I would say in our business, we've had one challenging client about probably every other year. It's definitely hard to please everybody, but the key I have found is being prepared, and taking the time for silence and to take a deep breath before responding. Um, I think the other thing is none of us are perfect, and so I have found that sometimes the most difficult and challenging clients have actually made us improve our business. We have had at times to really own our mistakes, and it's owning those where you grow the most. And I think that difficult clients, while some can be uh, unruly, they're sometimes really good lessons to be learned. So in some of these slides, I will kind of go over some of those examples. But I think at the end of the day, as a small business owner, if you can put yourself in the shoes of your client and kind of understand where they're coming from and have some empathy, you will come out ahead. Um, the bottom line is, though, I'm talking to probably multiple generations right now, Gen Zs, Gen Xs, and we all have different ways that we like to communicate. I have found with challenging clients, by far the very best way to handle a situation is picking up the phone. If you can't meet in person, picking up the phone and having that one-on-one dialogue is so very important. You can't hide behind texts and emails in making really harsh calls. I think I think if you can make that personal connection, you are always going to wind up ahead. So my one tip here always is when you have the ability, and that should be after almost every client shoot, you should look to have them give you a testimonial, because everybody's going to have a different perspective on what great things you did and how you worked. And so if you can keep a log of those testimonials or request them somehow, I would do that. That's my tip for setting yourself up for success here. So understanding your ideal client is really important. And I have broken this out into different categories because I know everybody listening might have a different niche. So we go across different specialties. So from a portrait client perspective, I'm going to talk right now. It's really important to understand kind of the basic demographics of your ideal client. So if somebody were to ask you, who's your ideal client, you should really know very succinctly between what ages, what gender. You should have a general location of where your ideal client is located, within a proximity to your studio or where you reside. You should have a really good idea of the occupation that your ideal client has. You should know kind of what their social media preferences are, and you should kind of have a good idea of where their income level is given where your pricing structure is. So for us, we tend to really attract people in the professional services. I would say less than we attract people in the artistic genre. So our clients typically are medical school, lawyers, um, real estate brokers. We tend to kind of attract those. We tend to attract married. We also attract people that work across different social media brackets. So Facebook is still one that's very much relevant in our business, where perhaps in some that are maybe targeting younger clients, it would be more a Twitter or an Instagram. So, who really is your ideal client? I would really jot down on a piece of paper who you think that is. Be able to articulate that client so that when you are developing a marketing strategy, it is specific for that client. Um, and then remember, especially when we're talking about difficult clients, not every client is going to be a good client. Not every client is an ideal fit. There have been many times where I've had little red flags going up in my mind that I wish I would have just said, we aren't maybe a good fit, but you might be a better fit with X photographer. Let me refer you because not all money, you don't need all money to come in because in the end, some of those clients will cost you much more than if you would have just kind of passed them by. Um, know your lane. I think we all believe that we can maybe do any type of job. But if your client is requesting something that you don't do, then don't try to do it unless you're confident that you can do a professional job. And I personally, I would put an emphasis on recurring clients. One of the things that my brother and I had done for a while is we had a lot of what I'll call conference or trade show clients, people that were coming into Indianapolis once once a year for a huge event. We would get great work from them, but those weren't recurring clients. We were getting a lot of those one-time corporations that were coming in for big events, but we couldn't turn them into recurring clients as much as we tried, right? We would say, oh, we'll go with you to Kansas City next year for that trade show. Well, that didn't necessarily make sense because they could find a photographer there. So when we put a lot of emphasis on recurring clients in our own city, we really started generating a lot more revenue. Okay, wedding and corporate clients. And I've kind of put these together because they're event driven. Um, Understand really who that client is and know how to communicate with them. From and that means communicate with them leading up to the event. So for weddings, it's really important for us to determine, okay, who really is our client? Is our client the bride and groom, or is the client the wedding planner? More importantly, is the client the mother of the bride? Because more or less, I will tell you, the most difficult clients that we've had over the years have been mothers of the bride. God bless them. I know they mean well, but sometimes they're the ones that are most difficult to please. In one circumstance, um, several years ago, because Nathan and I always considered the bride and groom to be our clients, we noticed there was a lot of friction and different opinions between the bride and groom and the mother. And at one point, the mother was very honest with us and very transparent. And she said, my daughter is not your client. I am paying for this wedding. I am the client, and you need to do what I want. Now, we we had to kind of erase our own thoughts because we're like, well, but it's her wedding day. But what we really learned in that circumstance is that we had to please both and we had to try to please both. And where we needed to kind of be a mediator between them, we tried our very best to do that. Okay, from a corporate perspective, we get hired oftentimes by the business, and then we also get hired by the corporate planner. So we need to know like which one is the most important for us to communicate with. Sometimes the planner doesn't want us to communicate at all with their client. Sometimes they want us to, but they want us to copy them on everything. So we have these are lessons we have learned along the way that are really important to understand. But at the end of the event, uh, what you do want to remember is, how can you help either party, any of those parties, achieve the memorable feelings of the day that they want to walk away with. Okay, so before booking your client, here are some things you need them to know. And again, my tip here is the best way to do this is to establish rapport. And I have found the best way to do that is just picking up the phone. And so I encourage everybody, even if it's not comfortable, to pick up the phone. I oftentimes make calls in my car. I have kids too, and so sometimes there is a lot of noise in the background. I have dogs. There's a lot of noise in the background at times. So I tend to do my one-on-one calls a lot in the car. So, what you want your clients to know if you're talking about portrait work is, you want them to know the difference between your packages. You want them to know your fees, your total cost, any add-ons they could expect at the end. Um, I think it's important to send a contract and also mention if they have any questions to send those back to you so that you can answer them. Um, You I know a lot of people are really good at prepping for their clients before a photo session. So I would say where you can provide guides or guidance, do so. They need to know what to expect on the day of the shoot before the shoot. Um, it's important always to give them at least a time frame, time range of when to expect their images. And it's also important for you to give them an idea of how you might use their images on social media and what you can expect, where they can expect to see those. Um, One thing that I know challenging clients can do is a lot of people have Photoshop, a lot of people have all of their Instagram um, different things that they can do on Instagram with pictures. You have to be very clear about what they can do with your images. If you want to hand it off and just have them do whatever they want with it, then that is your philosophy. If you are the kind of photographer that says, I spend a lot of time editing, I put a lot of care into it, and I want those images to remain intact, then I think that that's something that you have to have in your contract or have that conversation, so that they know they can't just put any kind of filter onto your images as they see fit. If you put a brand in your image on your images, you want to make sure they don't crop those images out. So make that very clear in your contract or any conversations that you have leading up to booking them. From a wedding perspective or a corporate perspective, again, this is event driven. I would say the difference between your packages are extremely important. For us, we do have kind of, I will say, set packages, but we also um, customize them as much as we can based on what the couple is really wanting. So we spend a lot of time presenting our packages and then kind of mix and matching them. But it's important to know, how much coverage you're getting as a client, how many photographers will be there, who the photographers will be with, who will be with them the day of, what are the products, are they getting the high resolution images, all of that. I'm probably not telling you anything new, but you got to be clear because if you're going to set yourself up for success, you need to make sure they know all of this information. I would say our especially over the last few years with COVID, a cancellation clause is very important to put in your contract. And it's very important that you know about it as well as your client knows about it. Um, we also put a lot of time into making sure our clients have a detailed itinerary and timeline that we've reviewed multiple times with them and a shot list. One of the things that we give them a general idea, for instance, on a wedding day or a corporate event, the typical shots that we take. However, if there are other important photographs that they want, then you need to know it and it needs to be provided to you before the event, not the day of the event. Um, Again, approximate time and getting images back is super important. I would say one thing that we're trying out right now is we are trying to give people some sneak peeks, some real quick, like turnaround sneak peeks, like within 24 hours. I have found that with challenging clients, or we will reduce our chances of getting a challenging client if we give them something to kind of chew on right away. It backs them off for several more weeks in hounding or asking for their images. So if you go through and say, here are 12 images we've edited for you, it takes the time away from your editing, or it gives you more time on your editing. Again, limitations on what they can do is very important as well here, especially from really a corporate perspective. Okay, so protecting your business. I will say the four big things: be insured, be insured, be insured. Contracts, communications, and explain your services. So let's talk about being insured, because I'm kind of one of those that's, better safe than sorry. Better have the right protections around you, um, so that you're not in a situation where you can't handle. So I think all small businesses need to be insured to reduce their liability. I think we not only have liability insurance, but we have equipment insurance. I mean, think about how much money you have invested in your equipment. To not have that insured is silly. Um, Equipment insurance is not expensive. Liability insurance is kind of just a built-in cost that you have to have. There is you Anything can happen, um, when you're photographing babies, when you're photographing weddings. Anything can happen. So protect yourself, because if you don't, and you don't have the right limited liability within your business already legally uh, figured out, then you're setting yourself up personally for some harm. So at this point, I would also listen to the module about all the legal things that we have a lawyer that has created that module. That's a really important one to listen to. Um, but depending on your area of specialty, I just would encourage everybody to have not only general liability, but the equipment. And in our case, because it's full time, it's you know business, we have also disability, because it's an important aspect of, if we can't do our jobs, then we will not be getting, obviously, that money that we bring in. So contracts, I've done a few things here, but I would suggest that you listen to the detailed module about legal protection in this course. But I will say contracts not only protect you, but they also protect your clients. So when clients are hesitant to sign a contract, you should make them aware that it's to protect them. It's to protect them, and it's to protect you, both parties. That's what contracts are. They're protecting both people. They set expectations, and it's not very expensive to hire a lawyer, really, to build this into your business, to review some things. But you have to remember too, if you are part of Iris, we already have a series of contracts that are free to you that you can get as a subscriber. And so those are important, because we've already vetted those with lawyers, and they are the ones that we use in and out for many subscribers. Give your clients a appropriate time to review the contract. I would say, um, you'll have to determine what that is depending on how soon your slots go. But, I think 24 to 48 hours is a reasonable expectation. Okay, communications. Here's my thing. I- I've mentioned that being on the phone is important, but your communication, no matter what, in written terms, it should be concise. It should be always on the same platform. So I don't put a lot of emphasis on texting with my clients at all. It gets lost. It's not necessarily historically there. I want to keep everything on email and in my CRM. Be concise and be professional in your wording. I'm a big stickler on professional writing. I think it's important. I think it elevates you, and you always have to fall back on least common denominator and just make it be professional. Save all emails. If you do have phone calls, I would, in your CRM, like Iris, I would make notations for when you have calls. I think it's very important to have a call tracker of when you talk to clients. Um, Try to keep notes. I'm a big note taker. So while I do notes on paper. I also make sure to keep client notes in my CRM under the note sections of my client. Um, and again, just really explaining the process and expectations before and after a shoot is super important. Explaining your services. How do you work best? Are you an off camera light shooter? Are you a natural light shooter? Do you work best indoors, outdoors? How long does it take to get images back? Those are all things that should be answered before a shoot, not after a shoot. Okay, so handling conflict. I'm going to start with good word choices because I think it's important to, as I mentioned earlier, taking a silent break before responding. There are those messages that I think, all have gotten where we are, it keeps us up at night. At least I am. I internalize things. I take things personally and I rough it up in my head for a long time. So I've really learned to try to take some silence and to take time in responding to emails or calls that are difficult to handle. So here's some good word choices. Let me make sure I understand you. I hear your frustration. I believe we can come to a good solution. I want to make sure you are satisfied with my services. So, XXX. Okay, let me explain the value of my services. Those are all good things that kind of take them off the defense. I would always make sure you're using words that take your client into a different position. So, when you get an email that really makes you angry, and man, you will get them, um, take a deep breath, walk away, just walk away. Gather your thoughts, write them down. Again, I'm a big note taker. If I have a difficult conversation to have, I am writing down what I expect to say in that conversation and the messages that I want to get across. Um, I think I'm gonna kind of say two things here. So when you get a difficult call or email, I think, again, I do think personal contact is important, but if you make personal contact, I would always summarize your call on an email so that you have record of it. So you agree to, here's what we talked about, and here was the solution. Always back everything up by email because inevitably, in the most difficult, challenging client situations, you have to fall back on your email communications. You just have to. Um, I would say, don't let too much time go by, but enough go by that you don't sound frustrated or defensive. You want to go into every conversation being cool headed and professional. Um, I think it's important. I think it's really important to understand a situation from a client's point of view because you may have been in that situation before too. So if you can take a step back and say, hey, if I were in your shoes, this is how I would feel. um, Own your mistakes. And then most importantly, out of all of this, out of always handling conflict, is always have a solution. What is going to make your business still remain intact? You have a certain threshold for professionalism and level that you want to keep, but also making your client happy. Offering up solutions is really, I've said before, but the best way is to kind of listen and understand where they're coming from. Um, Here's some solutions that we have found that can help. So, if you feel like your efforts didn't necessarily leave your client satisfied, perhaps you can offer one of these options. Is there a product that you can offer within your cadre of products? A canvas, some high resolution image downloads, a small album, whatever it might be that you offer. Is there something that you can offer them that might say to them, oh, okay, they've made an effort. They understand me. They know that I wasn't happy, and this is something that I wanted, and now this makes me happy. Sometimes people want further edits. I have gone down a big time rabbit hole with a client this year who just, um, I could not have edited each image more. It once I edited an image, she wanted more editing. You know, she was a woman, beautiful woman, but she wanted every wrinkle taken out, every blemish, every shadow, every wrinkle in her clothing, every anything in the background that she didn't like. It it was not what I wanted to do. Um, so I did make some sacrifices because I edited more than I wanted to, but um, it really it turned her around. Some images, I said I won't do that with all of the images. I want you to pick the number of. I want you to pick the 10 images that you want me to further edit, and be very specific about what you want in the editing, right? I don't want to go and edit the image and it not be enough. So I said, here are 10 images that you want. I will edit these 10. Tell me what it is that's really bothersome about those that you want. So if you can do some further editing and it's still okay for you to do and put that time in, it turned her around. It turned her around. That's all I can say. It gave her what she wanted, and it didn't necessarily dilute what was within our realm of services. Um, if you want, you can offer to have, a complimentary mini session at some point when you are holding mini sessions. You guys know your businesses to know what best to kind of ante up. And I would suggest to keep the relationship intact and to keep it, if you want to keep it intact, those are the best options. I always talk about the Nordstrom approach because Nordstrom always has historically been like, well, Costco too, a little bit. The client's always right, right? You can bring, you know, this elephant back a year later and get refunded from Nordstrom or Costco. It's their approach. They always want the client to return, and in bringing that elephant back, likely they will be finding something else they want in the store to purchase at that time. So their thought is, client's always right. So you have to kind of determine whether in your business, if that's the way that you would want to do things too, right? I think Nordstrom's always, they kind of have very compelling offerings about why they want people to keep coming back and why they refund, even in the most bizarre circumstances. But they live by that motto. So for photographers, difficult clients can still be right, but you can also give them personal attention without compromising your business policies. So I wouldn't necessarily give in to all unreasonable demands because sometimes people are just unreasonable. But use your best judgment in making these concessions, and just make sure that it feels right with you, that it feels good, and it feels like what you would want to stand by. Okay, I have hopefully given you some things to kind of munch on today. I know that. At least for me and historically in our business, I have really digested some difficult clients personally. Um, but at the end of the day, um, I've really tried to meet both ways. I've really tried to make them happy, and I've really tried not to compromise what we are in business for. So keep listening. I hope you've enjoyed all of the modules and the ones that have come before me and the one are coming after me. But I think this is just a great way to get some good information out there for you. And I hope in the end you do subscribe to Iris. Thank you.